Welcome, everybody. Welcome, friends and family. Welcome to the Story Slam Oakland Showcase of the workshop. I'm super excited you're all here. I am the host, Julie Solar. I am the one who created the workshop. And I also created Story Slam Oakland, which is a curated and open mic true storytelling show that has been happening in Oakland, California and San Francisco, but mostly in Oakland for 8 years. And COVID didn't even shut us down. I took 1 month to cry and be sad. And then I started doing online shows. And then the weirdest, coolest thing is that I realized that people online can come to a show or even a workshop from anywhere. They don't even have to leave their house. Obviously, that's the point of being online. And so I started teaching workshops because I figure I've seen a lot of stories. I've seen a lot of storytellers. I know a thing or two about what makes a story great. And I'm super excited to have you guys see these storytellers. And they were in the self-described beginning storytelling workshop. So these are people who describe themselves as beginners, although some of them have done Toastmasters and some of them have done a story on stage here and there. But they, claimed that they were beginners, but they're really, really good. And let me tell you a little bit about the workshop just for 1 minute. We met every week for 6 weeks. And that created a cohesiveness in our group. It wasn't just a one-day thing for a few hours with a lunch break. It was every Monday for 6 weeks. And what we did was we started off every meeting with a check-in. And those of you who've been to other types of groups may be familiar with the check-in format, but we did it a little differently. We checked in about whatever was going on that week or that day, but we tried to make each check-in into a little story. And in that way, we sort of practiced what I call the storytelling muscle. But the students also had a larger story that they were working on, and that's what they're going to share with you tonight. And every week we worked on some concepts about what makes a really great story, what's just an anecdote. And we looked at other people's stories and we analyzed them. And the students worked together. And they did a lot of editing on their stories. So this is the product you'll hear tonight of not just 6 weeks of workshop classes, but in between, the students had one-on-ones with me where I would listen to their story. Each person had at least 1 hour-long session with me where we workshopped their story one-on-one. And they also met with each other and edited there too. So they have done a lot of work on their stories. And I am so proud of them. And I'm so pleased with how all the stories turned out. And I think you'll really enjoy these stories. So I'm going to keep the audience muted for ease of not having background noise, which can be, unfortunately, very distracting over Zoom. But I've asked my workshop participants to be unmuted and laugh and make reactions if they wish. So that's why you might hear some reactions. But I certainly do encourage you to send your feedback via the chat if you want to. After the story is finished or during the storytellers don't look at the chat window when you're telling your story, okay? Don't do that. You can look at the chat window afterwards. But when you're telling your story, Story Slam Oakland style is to talk into the camera. And I teach everybody to talk into the camera because that makes it seem like we're actually making eye contact with you, even though we're standing alone in our apartments. Isn't that the magic of technology? So, once again, leave comments for the stories and the storytellers in the chat. You won't be allowed to actually unmute yourselves, unfortunately, because we don't want to have lots of, random noise. And then I will stick around afterwards to answer any questions about the workshop or how the storytelling workshop works and that kind of thing. So, first of all, I would like to welcome all the storytellers, and you guys are the ones who can applaud. So you'll be the peanut gallery, and you will be applauding after the storytellers. Okay, great. So the first storyteller we have tonight is Kathy Bruin. And I have given this name of her story as Weird versus Normal, although she might pick a different title. I sort of arbitrarily titled it that. And I'm letting a couple more people in. So please welcome our first storyteller of the evening, Kathy Bruin.
Woo! Yeah, Kathy.
Jaffe.
My coworker and friend, Debbie, got into trouble the day that she brought Pookie to work with her and later put him in the freezer in the company lunchroom. Pookie was a dead squirrel, and Debbie was a taxidermy hobbyist. She had brought Pookie to work to share with a coworker, and I didn't see Pookie, but she related the story to me that she had shared Pookie and then wrapped him back up in his foil and put him in the freezer. I had no choice, she said. He was beginning to thaw. Debbie lived in a studio apartment in Oakland where she stuffed dead animals and sometimes boiled the flesh off of them to better examine them, to study the physiology. Debbie was weird, but I was often drawn to weird people. I've, through my life, been drawn to stranger people. I think because I've tried in my own life to keep my own weird sides down. On one of the online dating sites, there's a question that asks, are you more weird or more normal? And I've really gone back and forth on that one a bunch of times. Although my ex-husband would say I have to say weird. So we worked in a publishing company. We were both 27 years old. And I worked in the ad traffic department that was a bustling department where my social skills and organizational skills helped me be successful there. Debbie worked in the accounting department where she was precise and methodical. And I think that we were drawn to each other in part because we were so different, but also we were both really good at what we did. So it made working together a pleasure. As I said, I tried hard my whole life to stay in the lines, right? I'm the oldest of four. I'm in a country that has a lot of rules for females. I was a class officer and a rule follower and a cheerleader.
Yeah.
But Debbie she was different. It was like she had the freedom to let her freak flag fly. And I really envied that. So one day, Debbie came to my cubicle and said, she asked me if I would go after work with her to Inverness to pick up a dead bobcat. She had read in the paper of a woman who had heard a ruckus out on her patio and had rushed outside to see a bobcat with her duck Donald in its mouth. So she grabbed a log and she hit the bobcat over the head, killing the bobcat and saving Donald. But the woman had been unsuccessful trying to get someone to take this specimen off her hands. She had been calling universities to try to share the dead bobcat. She said, it's a perfectly good bobcat. And she had told the San Francisco Chronicle, it's been cold up here. I'm sure he's in pretty good shape. So Debbie had tracked her down. This is in the years before Google. Had tracked down the woman and impersonated a professor at UC Berkeley and said she would be happy to come take the bobcat. She impersonated a professor at UC Berkeley. Like, what chutzpah. So who gets asked in the middle of a work week to drive to some town north of San Francisco to pick up a dead bobcat? Sure, I said, I'll go with you. So we drove up there. When we left work, it was dark because it was mid-December. We found the house, and the woman answered the door. She was in her mid-70s, and she related the story to us as she led us across her house, across the patio, past Donald the duck, and to the back fence. The woman looked over the fence. She had a flashlight and was looking for the bobcat, which was caught in a tight tangle of branches, right? So it hadn't fallen down to the ground. It was caught in the branches. And Debbie had brought with her a burlap sack, some gloves, a knife, and a flashlight. She handed me the flashlight and put on the gloves, got up on the fence, and pulled the bobcat over. Then she knelt beside it and very carefully checked its limbs, felt its body, its skeleton, and then she ran her thumbs up its spine, stopping at the base of the neck. "Yeah," she said, looking up at the woman. "You broke its neck. That's how you killed him." Mm. I was so out of my element. I had nothing to offer, right? I stood there lamely with my flashlight, and she was so confident and so knowledgeable and a budding scientist born of her own passion for this study. So she put the bobcat in the burlap sack, and we thanked the woman and left, driving down the hill into the tiny town of Inverness, where we stopped for pizza and beer. And when we got back in the car, Debbie put the key in the ignition, and she turned to me and said, "Smells like bobcat." And my eyes got wide, and I looked to the back of the car where that dead bobcat lay. And it was cold, right? So it wasn't a permeating smell. It was just this hint of a sicky, sweet, gamey smell of death. The only time in my whole life I've smelled that. So Debbie was fired the next Halloween when she came to work dressed in a full nun's habit. And she had this little baby carriage where she had put this ghoulish, snot-nosed doll that she was calling Baby Jesus. And she had this whole routine where she would like scream at Baby Jesus to be quiet and threaten to whip it with this long black bullwhip that completed the costume. We didn't have traffic. We were delighted by this performance piece, but it was just probably one offense too many in this small company. I, on the other hand, stayed for another maybe 11 or 12 years and was promoted a couple of different times. You know, I would say Debbie was a role model to me. She was out there, and I was, again, trying hard to stay in the lines. She was an odd bird, and I was a social butterfly. She was weird, and I was normal. But she was unabashedly herself, and I learned so much from her. And I bet that it's because of her that over the years, I've let some of my own weird come out.
Oh,
Right.
nice.
Awesome.
Well done, Kathy. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Yeah, especially pronouncing freak flag fly. That's really hard to say that right. Great. Thank you so much. All right, our next storyteller, Jane Wan. Jane's story really touched me. And without giving too much away, I titled it Standing Up to Sexual Misconduct. Jane is, I guess, a first-time storyteller with us. And I am just very pleased for you all to hear her story. Please welcome Jane Wan.
Jane.
So after going on a run along the Berkeley Marina, I always stop at the shore to pick up trash. It's my favorite part of the run because I stop and I take out my trash bags, my plastic gloves, and it's become this meditative cleansing ritual for me. And I like to pick up trash underneath the bridge where most of the trash tend to accumulate. So I was there, hunched over, putting in the pieces of trash, when I saw a man approach me from the corner of my eye. I stood up and took him in, all 5 feet of him. He wore these unfortunately high-waisted jeans, which he used to tuck in his black polo shirt in. And his hair was neatly parted in the middle with gel. The overall effect screaming, "I'm a little boy," even though his face betrayed that he's a young man, maybe in his late 20s or early 30s. And as he approached me, he asked, "Can I pee here?" I was a little taken aback, but it made sense. Under the bridge was the most obscure part of the shore, and where he could take care of his deed without the prying eyes of passerbys. And maybe like a dog, he just had a favorite peeing spot. So I let him be, and I walked off to another part of the shore where it was fully exposed, and I continued to pick up some trash again. A few minutes later, he approached me again. And this time he asked, "What are you doing here? Why are you picking up trash?" And I happily relayed the story of meeting a man many months ago who was doing the same thing that I was, just picking up trash alone. And I had asked him the same question: "Why are you here? Why are you picking up trash?" And he said, "I'm treasure hunting." Turns out that he wasn't just picking up trash. He was also looking out for interesting bits and baubles to take home and make trash art with. I was so inspired by the story that I then started picking up trash myself, but I had never found something to make the trash artist in me come alive. I just simply picked up trash. So I told the stranger in front of me this story, and perhaps inspired by the story, he asked me, "Can I help you pick up trash?" I looked at him warily, but assessed my surroundings. It's broad daylight. We were in an exposed part of the shore where plenty of walkers and runners were nearby. So I said, "Sure, you can help me pick up trash." Not a minute later, he grunted, "You're beautiful." I did a massive internal eye roll that I'm surprised my eyes aren't still stuck at the back of my skull. Because there I was in my sweaty running clothes, unflattering personal protection equipment, and at that point, carrying a trash bag that contained a used baby's diaper. Not my idea of a meet cute. So I walked away saying, "I want to pick up trash alone now." And that's when he asked, "Can you help me with something?" That question made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, but I stayed rooted where I was, and I looked at him because whatever he was about to say, I wanted him to look at my eyes and see that I was fully human. And that's when he asked, "Can you suck it? Suck it." Thrust my index finger at his face and said, "No, you may not talk to me like that." And I stormed off. I was so angry that here in my sacred place, where it's usually nothing but seagulls, the lapping of the water on the shore, and me, that even here I have to be objectified into nothing more than a sex doll, ready and willing to do a strange man's bidding. And then it hit me. Wait a minute, why am I walking away from my favorite spot? Why am I upset and scared when I didn't do anything wrong? And that's when I realized I don't have to be a victim of his actions, that I too can also act. So I called out to his disappearing figure, "Hey!" And he stopped and waited until I was again face to face with him. I looked him in the eye, but he looked down at the ground as I asked, "Has that line ever worked with any woman?" "I'm sorry," he said, still looking at the ground. "I mean, how do you think that makes me feel to be asked that question?" "I'm sorry," he said. "I don't know what got over me." "Listen," I sighed. "I come here often, and the next time I see you, I don't want to run away thinking you're some bad, scary man. I really want to believe you're a good person." And that's when he finally looked up and said, "Oh, I'm good. You don't have to worry about me. I'm good. I'm good." I hope so, I said, and I walked away. I don't know if I made any impact on this man, but I didn't talk to him for him. I talked to him for me. I did it for my 10-year-old self who got sexually assaulted by a stranger very much like him, who after what had happened to her, went home and didn't tell anyone, not her mother, her father, or her sister, what had happened, because she somehow felt that she was to blame, that that shame was hers to carry. I did it to show her that that shame was not hers and to return it to its rightful owner. And I also did it so that I could finally say that I too was a trash artist, that I found something ugly at the beach and transformed it into something beautiful for me.
Wow, Jane. Wow.
Excellent.
What a great ending to that story. That was fabulous.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Good job, Jane. Nice way to become a trash artist. All right. Yes, please leave feedback for Jane. Our next storyteller is Suleman Marzik. And Slay has been a supporter of Story Slam Oakland and has come to shows in San Francisco. And I was very delighted when he decided to take the workshop. And this is his first story at our event. Let me just admit one more person. Okay. So I have given this the title of Being Late for the Most Important Event. Please welcome Slay Marzik.
Hey, Slay.
Well, let me start with everyone who knows me knows that I'm sometimes late. That whether it's for dinner or lunch or just to come by and say hi, there are times when I'm late, whether it's a minute, 10 minutes, 30 minutes. And what people don't know is that this is actually a bit of a family habit. 4 siblings late, except for my older brother, Parwez. He always on time, always punctual, and he really bothers him and always has that the rest of us are late, especially me, the youngest. And in fact, an example of this was when I visited Parwez in New York, so that's where he lived. And we were going to meet at a pizza parlor, which we did. I was late a little bit, maybe an hour, some would say. And when I got there, he had ordered a large pizza and he had eaten the entire pizza. This is like a New York pizza. And he had left one slice. Now, later on, I found out that he had gotten pretty full by the 6th slice, but he had eaten 5 more slices just to make a point, and just stuffed them down his throat. And I said, "What's up? You just have 1 slice left and you ate the whole thing." He said, "Yeah, that's right. When you're late, your pizza gets eaten by the world, all right?" And so, okay, thanks for the lesson. I did not learn my lesson, left New York. We still had a great time. Anyway, that went on for time passed for a few years, and I got a call one day. I remember it was afternoon, about 2:30, and that call, a police officer told me that my brother had a stroke while he was driving, and that he had gotten hurt pretty badly. He was in the hospital, and so that started a real journey of the entire family, including myself, being worried about what would happen to him. It ended up that Parwez was paralyzed half of his body. His left arm, in which we're all left-handed, worked, thankfully, but the rest of his body, his right leg, his right arm, right side of his face was paralyzed. And so that's how he ended up in a rehabilitation center in Queens, New York, where he lived. And essentially, I would go and visit him, I would see him. And I was told that even then, even in that state, he hated people being late. And so a nurse told me, he said, your brother, what he does is, if we're late with his lunch, he will jump off of the bed with one leg not working and one arm not working, crawl, use the other leg to kick the door closed and try to lock it and put a door in front of it just to make a point that they should not be late again. And so they're never late, usually, with his lunch or dinner. Otherwise, he was a gentleman and an angel. So went. And again, time passed, and Parwez, being the kind of guy that he is, maintained his life. And got a call a few years after that an infection had happened, and Parwez had gotten an infection. And so he was being taken to the hospital. And I went to work the next day after getting that call, told the rest of the family, but I wasn't really working. I was in this little cubicle. I remember this cubicle. One side was, really was a meeting room. One side was just glass, but I would turn my back to the glass because my eyes were so wet with tears, just worrying about my brother. I was calling family, doctors. I couldn't make it there in time, but I wanted to get other people to get over there who were closer. And so I just fielded some calls. And finally, we decided that we'll have my sister go and visit him. And so she got in the plane and she flew over, got to LaGuardia Airport, called me and said, hey, I'm here. And she started driving to the hospital, taking a cab to the hospital. And as we were talking on the phone, I called the doctor and asked the doctor, how's he doing? She's saying he's not doing very well, but he's in surgery and hopefully he'll be fine. When he gets out, he'll be waiting for you out of surgery when your sister arrives. About 15, 20 minutes after that, I got a call from the doctor. The infection had gone to Parwez's heart, and his heart valves had stopped working. And she told me that your brother just passed away. And my sister was about 15 minutes from the hospital. So I took a minute to gather myself, put the phone down. I called my sister, and I told her that Parwez has passed away. And so a few days later, in his funeral, we were very sad, but we had a little bit of a smile afterwards when we talked amongst ourselves, and we thought, he'd been waiting for us to be on time all his life, and finally he'd had enough and got us back and left before we could arrive.
Mm. Wow.
Thank you.
Really?
Wow.
Well done. Yeah.
Left without you after all. Yep. That's a very moving story. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, our next storyteller is Laura Jaffe. Laura really worked hard on this story. It went through many iterations. And it's, Laura, will you tell us the name? Because I have the old name here, but you wanted a new name for it and you got it. So go ahead. I'm going to spotlight you now. Please welcome Laura Jaffe, everyone.
Hi, thanks. So this story is called Jill and Me and the Concert of Love. Jill and I became friends when we were in 5th grade. And we bonded over a game of hopscotch that was really super complicated. It involved all kinds of stuff, like we had to play jacks. And then if we had to put our hand down for a moment, we had to spell the name of a long state. And it was so good for us to become friends in that way. You see, we were both outcasts at the school. And I was an outcast because I was like the stinky, smelly kid with the dirty clothes, because there was alcoholism and neglect in my home. And Jill was an outcast because she was nervous and she always wanted to please everyone, but didn't have good social skills. And she just became a mark for the mean kids, you know? And we had been going to school together at the same elementary school in Palo Alto for a long time, but it took us to 5th grade to figure out that we could be friends and bond together over a game of hopscotch and be with each other, not be bullied by each other. But really, I think the thing that bonded us together more than a game of hopscotch was music. I spent so many blissful afternoons at Jill's house listening to music with her. She introduced me to so many fantastic artists, including Neil Young, absolutely one of her favorites. And I certainly came to appreciate Neil and his musical brilliance over the years as she braved on. I loved going to Jill's house those afternoons and long summer days and sitting there just listening to records with her. Some days we would just listen to an album start to finish without really saying anything, just allowing each other to have our own experiences, maybe sharing about them after, maybe not. I loved it because it was cool and peaceful and serene, and pretty different from my cluttered, dirty, jaggedy living room. Really liked being at hers instead. And over the years, we just formed a really great, totally accepting friendship with each other. Well, the years went on and we grew up and we moved away, we got jobs, we went on with our lives, but we stayed bonded over music and everything else that came too. It worked out that eventually our annual get-together was at a concert called the Bridge School Benefit, which was held at the Shoreline Amphitheater in Mountain View. This show went on from 1986 to 2016, 30 years. And it was a 2-day show, Saturday, Sunday. It was a wonderful show, truly fantastic. It became the place that Jill and I gathered every year. And especially after she moved to Washington State, she would get on the plane the weekend of the show, and I'd pick her up sometime on Friday and drop her off sometime on Monday. And I tell you, as nonstop talk, we would pick it up exactly from where we left it off, right as soon as we got together, because this kind of friendship is timeless. It doesn't matter. There's no, oh gosh, you didn't call me this year. Yes, that actually happened. Entire years would go by and we wouldn't talk, and it didn't matter. We just have that bond, that connection. The Bridge Benefit is a really special show, and I'm not surprised that we ended up making that our annual get-together. It's a show that was put on by Neil Young, of course, as a benefit for a school in, I think it's Burlingame, that is for children that have severe impediments, physical impediments, and speech impediments. And they used to line the kids up at the back of the stage in their wheelchairs, two risers of them, 2 tiers. And the performers at the show, year after year, would come out and tell us, these kids are awesome. This is an amazing thing. And I would look around this show that went on from 1986 to 2016, 30 years. And I swear I saw a lot of the same people. And it felt to me like some of those people also probably were outcasts when they were in elementary school. And it felt to me like that show was all about gathering together and looking inside and loving up whoever is in front of you, loving up people, even if they look a little bit different or act a little bit different, or maybe we're outcasts in elementary school. So this show, like I said, Neil Young's super important to Jill, just absolutely one of her favorites. And she went to, I think, 28 of those shows across the 30 years that was there. I made it to 25 or 26, almost as good. And I think that just kind of illustrates for you how super important it was for her to see it. One year in 2000, it was so rainy, and we had lawn seats at the shoreline, and there was a steep hill with the lawn, and we were at the front. So we had a whole thing about making sure we got there. And unfortunately that year, what it meant was that we were sitting in a couple of inches of rainwater and mud, and it was cold, and I was suffering because I used to suffer with the cold a lot. And I kept saying, Jill, can we leave? Can we leave? Can we go home? I need to get out of here. And she's like, no, I really, really want to see Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young play. So I ended up at the infirmary, bundled under sleeping bags and just trying to stay warm. Jill came by at the end of the show and picked me up, and we went home. And when Jill saw how much I was suffering, she said, oh my gosh, Laura, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. Let me make it up to you in some way. And well, we had tickets to the Sunday show the next day. And I was saying, I really don't want to go if we're going to sit in the rain like that. Or even if it's not raining, I don't want to sit in the mud again. Well, fortunately, it was actually one of the first concerts ever live streamed. And I knew how to hook up my television to the internet. So we agreed that we would watch it the next day on a live stream instead of going to the show. And that was Jill's way of saying, I'm sorry, when she said, I don't want to see you uncomfortable like that. So the next day we tuned in early, and I had it all set up, and we were standing there in my living room watching. Guess what? They had helicopters, I tell you, using their blades over that wet, muddy field, using their blades like blow dryers to dry the field. My jaw was like dropped. I'm like, really? And after that, straw was spread, and I'm turning, I'm looking at Jill, and I said, oh, Jill, I'm so sorry. We could have been there. And Jill turned and looked at me and said, that's okay, Laura. It's okay. Because she really loves me. And I think when you really love someone like that, you give a little. And you take a little sometimes too. It's a give and take. And it is a total tribute to our level, to our love for each other and our nearly 50-year friendship, to be able to just kick back in my living room that day and enjoy the show. And I got to tell you, in the 20 years since then, I have never heard word one from Jill saying, we could have gone. I am so blessed to have the love of this friend in my life. Thank you.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much.
Nice.
Laura Jaffe, everyone. All right. Our next storyteller is Laura Groffman. Laura has been coming to the show for a while, and this is her first time taking the workshop. And she has this, story that I'm calling the accidental reveal. The accidental reveal. So please welcome Laura Groffman.
All right. Thank you very much. It was 1983, and Marvin Gaye was singing Sexual Healing into my ears. I was listening to my Sony Walkman and hiking in the woods of Inverness, and it was one of those balmy, crystal clear, shiny October days. And as I walked through the woods, I came across a field of what appeared to me to be portobello mushrooms. So I gathered up a great big bag of these mushrooms and went back home to my home in West Marin and sauteed up one of these mushrooms after getting cleaned up and washing my hands and washing my one mushroom. And my new girlfriend was coming over that evening, and I just couldn't have been a happier person. I was in a new relationship. I had a good job that was solid for my future. I was on top of the world. So I finished eating this mushroom that didn't taste particularly good. And Amy came over and spent the night. And in the morning, I woke up to go to work, and within 30 seconds realized that I was very, very sick. And by the time I got to Amy and said, Amy, something's wrong, I picked up the phone. I could no longer see the numbers on the phone. I was that sick that quickly. Well, we called emergency. They said, just get in the car, go. Amy grabbed me and luckily the bag of mushrooms out of the refrigerator, and we hightailed it to Marin General Hospital. When we got there, the doctors said, lo and behold, the head of the Mycological Institute lives a block away from the hospital. Let's call her over and find out what you've ingested. And she arrives and informs everyone that what I had thought was an edible mushroom was actually an Amanita phalloides, which, if you don't know, you know now, is the death cap mushroom. So the doctors freaked out. They did not have the ability at Marin General Hospital to save my life. So they sent me on ambulance-wise to San Francisco General, where my brother was waiting. And he was just gorgeous and handsome and looked just like a doctor. So he followed me into where the doctors were, and they informed him that they needed and he needed to call the parental units because I was probably going to die from this, if not from the first level of poisoning, but from the second level of poisoning, which is why they call it death cap. So he called the parents, which freaked me out completely because I kept saying to myself, this is the stupidest way that anybody can possibly die. I refuse to go like this. I was completely ashamed of myself, and I already had a really iffy relationship with my parents. This would have really tipped them over. So lo and behold, they put a garden hose sized tube up my nose. They sedate me so that I don't reject it. They start pumping charcoal into my body to turn me into the biggest human charcoal filter you could ever imagine. And my parents finally arrived 2 days later because they didn't want to buy an emergency flight that cost thousands. They figured it could wait. So they arrived, and in between coming out of sedation, Amy sitting in the corner of the room trying to save me from nurses that are jamming this charcoal that's the consistency of stucco and split pea soup up into my body with tubes going. The room looked like The Exorcist. Here come my parents into the room. They're looking at me. I'm looking at them. And I say to them, hi, Mom and Dad. that lady over there in the corner, she's my lover. I'm a lesbian. And they look at me and they say, we'll deal with that later, should you live through this. And I wanted to say that that was part of my journey of sexual healing.
Nicely done.
Well done, Laura. Indeed, sexual healing in your parents and your first coming out party in a charcoal stained hospital room. I can just picture it. Awesome. Great job. Our last storyteller of the evening is Owen Chen. Owen came to one of my spontaneous storytelling open mic shows and liked it so much. He was like, hey, I want to do that. And got a spot in the workshop. And he has worked really hard on this story, which I'm sure you'll all like it. I'm calling it surprise at the hip hop contest. Please welcome Owen Chen.
Owen.
So last year, I became really interested in learning hip hop dancing after watching a bunch of YouTube videos of these really good dancers. And, I just really like the way they dance. They're so fast, they're so accurate. And most of all, I really like their confidence. And I decided I want to be just like that someday. So I started taking dance classes around the Bay Area. And at this point, I had zero dance experience. So I was starting from the bottom, but every week I was taking more classes. I was getting better and better. And around end of the year, I found out about this dance competition that was happening between some tech companies in the area. And I thought, this is the perfect opportunity for me to, showcase what I got. Tech folks aren't exactly known for being really active and great dancers. So this is right at my skill level. I might even, do pretty well. I might even win because I've been taking some classes myself. So I joined my company's dance team and we had our little weekly practice where we rehearsed our dance routines. And after, a couple months of practicing, we were getting pretty good. We were like nailing our moves. We were super in sync. And we had this one signature move where we all run to the front of the stage and we all jump up at the same time. And I thought that was super epic. The day of the competition comes, I wake up feeling very confident. I thought we were hot shit. I thought we were gonna win the whole thing. We arrive at the venue a couple hours earlier to get set up to stage rehearsal. And this was the first time I get to see the other teams that we're competing against in action. And originally, I thought this was just some, after work, fun extracurricular activity and, not that serious. But, man, these other teams, they took it way more seriously than us. The first thing I noticed when I walked in is that everyone else had these matching uniforms. There's this one team that had these red and black leather jacket with chains. They look like they're in a gang, super sharp, super intimidating, super cool. And this other team, they're all wearing these yellow jumpsuits, like they came off a set of a superhero movie. And then there's us. We didn't have a uniform. We pretty much just agreed to all wear shirts. So we have one guy wearing a long sleeve pink shirt, another guy wearing like a green shirt. I was wearing a blue shirt. We just look super disorganized, and we stood out because we were not organized at all. We looked like 10 people that they pulled from the audience last minute instead of a real team that's competing. And when I realized this, I started to get a little bit self-conscious about the way we look. I asked our team leader, AC, I asked, hey, is it too late to do some last minute shopping and get some matching clothes? And he said it was. So that's disappointing. But then, other than their clothes, I also noticed that the other teams have way more complex dance routines. Our signature move is run to the front of the stage and jump up at the same time, which I thought was really cool. But everyone else there was doing front flips, back flips, splits, double backflip. And as I was sitting backstage watching the other team practice their backflips, I realized we don't have a chance. We're not going to win this. And throughout the day, more and more team shows up to practice and rehearse, and everyone is better than us, and everyone had matching uniforms. And it just slowly dawned on me that not only are we not going to win, we're probably going to come in last place. And at this point, I started to get really bad stage fright. I started to get worried about things that I shouldn't be worried about. Like, what if I forget the moves on stage? What if I trip and fall on someone? And I also started to question, the point of even competing if we're probably just going to come in last place. And to make things even worse, I originally thought it was, only teams from tech companies that's competing, but it turns out there were some professional dance teams that were showcasing their routine. And even though they're not part of the competition, they're still performing and they're still going to make us look bad. And one of these teams is called Straight Jacket. You might have heard of them. They're really, really good. They competed in NBC's World of Dance. They're literally one of the best teams in the country. And we're scheduled to perform right before them. So we have this one team that won national competition. And then you have us who don't even have matching uniform. And we're supposed to go right before them. At this point, I don't even care about the competition anymore. Now I'm worried about if we're going to embarrass ourselves. And, my stage fright at this point got really bad. And minutes before we're supposed to go on stage, I literally could not move my legs. I was so nervous. I was breathing into a paper bag. I started questioning, do I even want to do this? I mean, what's the point if I'm just going to lose the competition and embarrass myself and just humiliate ourselves? And, I was eyeing to exit. I was about to go home when AC, the team leader, he called a huddle. And it looked like he was going to give a pep talk. And that got me excited because I've seen the movies where the coach gives the epic speech to the underdog team and they somehow get really motivated and superpowers and win despite all the, obstacles. But that didn't happen. He was brutally honest and he pretty much just told us that, yes, we do suck. Yes, we're probably going to place last. And at first I was pretty disappointed. I was expecting that epic speech. And but after a while, I kind of realized, he's right. We are so much worse than everyone else. And there's really no sugarcoating it. But at the same time, I realized that doesn't mean we shouldn't go up on stage and perform, even though we have no chance of winning. Mm-hmm. See, for these other teams, they probably competed in so many competitions before this. It's just another competition for them. And, they're probably bored at this point. But for us, it's different. It's the first time many of us are competing in a dance competition, first time performing on stage, which is very, frightening, but also exciting at the same time. And it's not easy to go on stage knowing that you can't win and knowing that you're so much worse than everyone else. These other teams, they're competing to win the competition, but we're competing against ourselves. Our victory is if we just overcome our fear and walk up on stage. Mm. And that gave me enough push to drag myself on stage. And once we're on stage, we danced our heart out. We ran to the front of the stage together and we all jumped up together and the crowd cheered. Unfortunately, we didn't place very well as expected. We celebrated harder than every other team.
Yay! All right, Owen. Yay. Good job. Okay, everybody, that is our showcase. Please give a round of applause. Leave some claps in the chat to everybody. And I'm going to stick around and answer any questions you might have about the workshop. If you're interested in taking it, there are some spots left open in the next round of beginning workshops that starts, I'm looking at my calendar, which is over there, starts 2 weeks from now on the 14th. Monday the 14th, for 6 Mondays. But I'm really proud of all these students. A lot of them came in not even knowing what story they had in mind to tell. Some of them switched, workshopped a story for a few weeks in one direction and then changed to a different story altogether. And they all really supported each other in editing and fine-tuning their stories. So I'm all really, really impressed with all of them. You guys, would you like to say anything to the audience about the workshop or what the experience was like for you? Just start talking. You don't need
It was an amazing workshop. I'm going to be honest. And chat, thank you.
A lot of fun, really fun.
It was amazing and having fun and just being a.
Oops, you got muted by accident. Thank you, Slay, for the kind words, though. I heard it was an amazing workshop. That's what I'm taking away.
That's what it was. It was good enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Julie, thank you. I feel like you made this a safe place, emotionally safe and just fun. I was able to just have fun doing it. And, for me, this storytelling showcase was exactly like Owen's dance, just showing up and doing it. My God, thank you for giving me the opportunity. It was great.
Thank you for the kind.
I recommend it.
Yeah.
I would add to it, Julie, that this is some of the cheapest, deepest therapy that you could be doing on a creative level, because you discover as you start to unpack a simple story, you start to unpack levels of things that you didn't think about, feelings you hadn't remembered. It's a double dose of creativity and therapy, and I really appreciate what you do. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Laura. It was great working with you too. Really nice. Yeah. I'm not trained as a therapist, so don't come to me for therapy, but I do try to create a supportive environment. And I think that's what we do a lot, especially now. Yeah.
It was so special, not only mining our lives for our stories, but also witnessing other people's incredible life stories. So it was just the most engaging Zoom workshop I've ever been a part of. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. That's so great to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just even aside from the story, just having the ability to, I guess, like hang out with everyone on Monday and just hear everyone's stories and hear everyone's week was like really refreshing in a time like this when we're all stuck at home and, don't have like too much social interaction as before. I was definitely looking forward to Mondays and hearing how everyone just improved their story. So thank you, Julie.
Oh, thanks, Owen. Thanks so much for the kind words. Yeah, it's great having you in the class. All right. So that's everybody. Kathy invited me to teach a workshop at her school, right?
Yeah.
I still have to do that application. So, what's the school again?
It's the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at San Francisco State. So it's for people over 50, for anyone who's over 50 and wants to take a class.
Nice plug there for OSHA Lifelong Learning. All right. Well, if anybody in the audience has a question, you can put it in the chat, or you can, let's see, I can unmute people. If you want to, you can unmute yourselves now. I've muted everybody, but you can unmute yourselves. So I'll stick around a little while, and but thank you all for coming. Thank you all for listening to the stories. The storytellers need an audience, and you did that for them. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. All right. Yeah, does anybody in the audience who's still there have a story they want to work on? They want to throw out a couple of lines of, or an idea of?
Yeah, that's good.
Julie, I have a question. This is Karen.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, Julie. Thank you so much for just, I can see just how the students really appreciate the work you've done with them. And my question in the class is, do you set up a format where students give feedback to each other? How does the class work?
Right. So the way it works is every week we go over what I call the basic elements of a good story. And so during the feedback session, when the students have developed their stories, the feedback is really limited to how do the basic elements that we're learning play into what they're working on. For example, every story needs an arc. It's so that once you're starting in one place in your story and things happen in your story, and at the end of your story, you're different. For example, in Owen's story, he started off thinking that he was going to win this competition or at least look good. And it turned out that that he didn't end up winning, but that even that changed. And the arc came and put him down. We're just dancing for the joy of it was the whole point. So that's what I call an arc. But your question is really important because in any creative endeavor, people's opinions really, they penetrate into you more than, well, I shouldn't say more, but they penetrate into you when you're working on something very personal. And it's important to separate somebody's opinion, I like this, I didn't like that, from things that are truly useful for the stage where you are at in your creative process. So I make sure that we treat each other with care, with support, and with positivity in giving the feedback, and that we keep the feedback tailored to the elements that we have been learning, that I've been presenting, or that we've seen other storytellers do well. But yeah, that's a really good question about feedback. And also it doesn't go on and on and on. We kind of do lightning rounds of feedback, so it doesn't take too long. And people spend most of the time working on stories and telling each other stories. We use the Zoom breakout rooms sometimes to do one-on-one stories so that people have more of a chance to tell stories than just a couple people each time, except near the end when we're all listening to the polished stories.
But what do you mean by breakout rooms?
Okay, so in Zoom, you have the ability to meet all in one room like we're meeting now, or you can use the Zoom breakout room function to put people in separate little meetings for like 8 minutes.
I understand what breakout rooms are, but are you saying that there's going to be workshop with your partner in the breakout rooms?
Yeah, you can do that. Mm-hmm. So we did that some of the time, yes.
Okay, got it. And how long is it?
So the workshop is 6 weeks with 1.5 hours of session. And then you would get 1 hour long one-on-one session with me independent of those 6 weeks, like sometime in between. And our beginning students also worked with each other at least a few times outside of class. They met on Zoom at least a few times outside of class.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I actually prefer your format. I took another storytelling class and there was feedback, but it went on for like on. And sometimes like the class would start at 6 and we wouldn't stop until 10 p.m. because of all the feedback. It was just exhausting.
Yeah, I do honor that we have a limited attention span. Some of us have Zoom fatigue because we're working from home all the time. Yeah. So at 9 o'clock, we wrap it up and we're done. It's definitely only an hour and a half class, and every student gets to talk, at least during the check-ins. They do get to work on story techniques at each class.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you for answering my questions.
Oh, for sure. And you guys, thank you so much for coming. If any of you have to leave, I want to honor your time, including my students in my workshop, Kathy and Lauren, Jane and Slay and Owen. If you have to take off, thank you for coming and sharing and bringing your friends and family. But I don't want to keep you here just because I'm answering questions. That's how I am in the workshop too. I'm like, let's end on time so we can get back to our lives. So yeah, any other questions?
If I may, I don't really have a question, but I would like to say that it is a delightful surprise to remember our first class and how we started our stories, and then to hear where they've ended up now. I mean, I am used to my own story. I know I want to say my flaws, but to hear how other people have taken their stories and made them really shine in just this short amount of time, I'm impressed. But thank you. Thank you. Really,
Thanks, Laura. Yeah. Yeah, things changed a lot over the course of the 6 weeks, for sure. Yeah. Yay. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. Oh, let me just let you know that you can email me if you have any questions privately. And thank you all for coming. Thank you all for supporting each other and supporting your friends, the storytellers. And I hope that you all have a really wonderful, story-worthy rest of the pandemic, everyone, until we all can see each other in person again. All right, I'm going to say goodnight.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good night. Bye.